Moment. Now, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 messages who basically are saying, Chelsea fans, there's Terry, there's John, there's Graham, we're all Chelsea fans. Where are Chelsea in this conversation right now, Stefan? Where are they right now? What's going on with Chelsea?
Well, we know for certain that they didn't breach 22-23, because if they had breached 22-23,
they'd been charged.
They'd have been charged, and we'd have been sat here either after the Chelsea Independent Commission or waiting for it to occur. So we know they got through 22-23, and in fairness to them, in that year, it was a Champions League year, and their revenue, we now know, was £512 million. So we know that actually they had a relatively good year from a top-line perspective, and that's all well and good. And we know all of this because, well, there's now a number of sources, because, of course, none of the clubs who, or not none of them, but almost all of the clubs that have a year-end of 30th of June 2023, almost all of them are waiting until the final possible day to release their accounts into the public domain, even though we know for certain that they were all signed off well in advance of the 31st of December. And we know that because they had to file them with the Premier League, of course. So they're all sat on these accounts. We don't know what they say, but we do know through various sources what some of the key numbers are. And in terms of Chelsea, we know that they made a £90 million loss for for the year to June 2023. Now, that occurred after they made a profit on disposal of player registrations and fixed assets of 142 million. Now, that means that clearly when you add those two things together, their losses, their operating losses, were absolutely enormous. They were over £230 million. Now, we were not aware that they would make as much as £142 million of profit in the last season. The number that was in the general, in the sort of public domain, when people did the maths and added up who they sold, was nearer 100 million. And there was an assumption that Mason Mount, because he was announced on Manchester United's website on the 1st of July, had been put into this current season. So the £55 million of profit was in this season. It now transpires that Mason Mount appears to have been transacted in 22-23. And that is how they got through 22-23.
Which means they've now got a £55 million bigger hole this season.
Correct. Because we also know from the Blue Co accounts that they are currently, from the post-balance sheet events, that they are currently something like £48 million in profit for this year. But of course, this year, from an operating perspective, is going to be even worse than last year.
Because they've got no Champions League.
Because they've got no Champions League.
Right.
And, well, they've got no Europe at all. Mm. So we know that straight away...
Two big cup runs, though.
Yeah, but of course you pay away 45% of that revenue for all of those games.
Sure.
So
how do Chelsea deal with this? They've got to sell.
It will make no difference at all to Chelsea's FFP and PSR position if they sell players like Kepa and Lukaku, because they don't make any profit on those players, even if, which we expect, their book values have been written down substantially since purchase. So really, they have to find buyers for Chalobah for 20 million quid, for Brozier for 40 million quid, for Gallagher for 50 million quid. It's those sorts of deals that need to be done. And by the way, they all need to be done before 30th of June. And that, as we know, because it's actually articulated within the Forest decision, there's a whole conversation about how hard it is to sell players in the period before June. The Premier League actually suggested more or less that it was impossible and got a slight rebuke.
What Stefan is basically saying, in the shortest of terms, it's absolutely inconceivable that by December of next year, Chelsea won't be facing a charge from the Premier League for breaching financial fair play unless there's a complete sea change in the rules and a complete rowing back from the perspective. If you're looking at Chelsea's numbers, unless they're going to go and sell somewhere in the region of £200 million worth of players that have a low cost base on them, so the players that you would think they're going to be least likely to sell, then Chelsea are going to be in the situation that Nottingham Forest and Everton have been in.
Doesn't sound good. I mean, and again, there are some assumptions in here. I mean, there's no accusations of. I mean, this doesn't include the elements of historic, quote unquote, financial mismanagement and potential cheating that they've reported themselves for. This is a completely separate thing. But according to all the documents that are now out, and obviously, normally the trading accounts run like May till May, but they've all been submitted early now, but they won't be shown until the end of the season. So nobody has any idea what's going to happen. But looking at the current trading accounts, the turnover they have, no European football, the fact that Mason Mount went into last season's accounts to make sure they didn't breach and not this year's, they're in trouble. And I know there was a few Chelsea fans in the comments during that time, but we have to sell £100 million worth of players. Listen to what Stefan said there. The Premier League got a bit of a slap on the wrist in that report for saying that it's nearly impossible to sell players before the end of June. And this is where rivals are going to sit there and go, hang on a minute. I'm not going to give you 40 for Broja. I'm not giving you 25 million for Chalobah. I'm not giving you 50 million for Conor Gallagher now. I'm waiting until July because then they're cheaper. Or I'll sell him. We'll buy him now, but we ain't paying 50. We'll give you 30 million for him. I don't understand why rivals are going to help them. Maybe they will, but I think Chelsea fans, I understand this could end up being okay. It could. But I think Chelsea fans have got to wake up and smell the coffee. And I've got a big question for them. How the hell, because a lot of them have got faith in this. How have you got faith in Todd Bowley and co after what they've done in their first 18 months? It's madness. It's strange to me.
Absolute madness.
I just want to quickly say, this team spent £1 billion, right, in 18 months. And at the time, everyone was saying, this is weird. You know what I mean? This is weird. If you actually listen to what they're saying, because people like to think that like these guys don't know what they're talking about. Simon Jordan ran a football club. Yeah. Now I know he went bankrupt or whatever, and like it all went tits up, but like in fact, he knows what he's talking about. And Stefan, he knows what he's talking about as well. So let's just talk about the fact that they know what they're talking about. If you actually listen to what they just said, they effectively said that Chelsea only just made it through these accounts, right? These accounts also included Champions League revenue, which isn't going to be in there next year. And it also included the sale of Mason Mount. So these guys are going to have to sell a lot of players. And like Simon just said, it's looking pretty impossible for Chelsea to come out of this safe unless they sell a load of players. And by the way, again, they have to sell players that they make a profit on, basically academy players, for it to work. And I've seen something that was floating around social media yesterday. I think it's Stefan actually put it on. In the Nottingham Forest report, the guys, the Independent Commission wrote this. Let me read this out to you. This is in the report. And now ask yourself, why did they write this in the Nottingham Forest report when it's not really relevant? I think they're letting people know what's about to happen. And maybe before anyone says, maybe it's about my club, I'm just going to put it out there so we can have an honest conversation about it. This is what they said. Where a PSR breach, profit sustainability rules, is minor, then it will be for the other commissions to determine if any points deduction is necessary, appropriate, or proportionate. But if the breach is properly described as major, then it may be the case that even a very severe sanction, such as expulsion, is more appropriate. And this is coming out again. I think genuinely, Chelsea could be in serious trouble here. I think they could be in serious trouble. And I love how people in the chat go, LB, City this, City that. I literally never deny it. City are in trouble as well if City are found guilty. City are in this conversation as well. So I'm just saying it because we're just having an honest conversation on the channel that I think Chelsea are in serious trouble. And I think we know they're in serious trouble because they forced the Mason Mount thing in last year's accounts when everybody in the industry, when you listen to these people speak, thought Mason Mount was going to be in this year's accounts. It was in last year's. That tells me they panicked and they had to force it through real quick.
Mate, honestly, madness, what we're listening to. Like, absolute crazy. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. 2 decades, they've had their fun. They're finished, mate. Absolutely finished. It's an embarrassment of a club right now. It's being run like a circus. And if all of that stuff, what they're saying there is true, like LB says, these aren't guys that have got opinions. These are guys who actually have some facts and figures in front of them. No, I don't have, right? That was really interesting and insightful to me. That is basically saying, go and sell some crap players for 5 times the amount they're worth, or you're basically in the doo-doo. Class. I'm here for it. They ain't getting 40 million for Broja. They're getting he's on loan to Fulham, the guy. He can't even get the team. They're not getting 50 or 60 million for Conor Gallagher. He's had a good season. 60 million for him. No, thank you.